Okay, so recently I saw a video called Top 10 Scary Thomas the Tank Engine Theories, and the best way I can describe it is to think of the worst piece of supposed entertainment you can. So whether it's a book, a TV show, a film, piece of music, YouTube video, whatever, and multiply how bad that is by 100. There are no redeemable factors about this video, and it is very clear that the person making this knows nothing about Thomas, and she's made a lot of stuff up. And while I was making a video to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the franchise, which I'm already nearly 3 weeks late with, I needed to make this video channeling my frustration and my anger, and just saying what is wrong with this video. From a 10-minute video, of which about 9 are actual content, I've made 5 pages of notes and 76 bullet points, with many of these bullet points having multiple parts to them. So, let's dive on in.
All aboard the train to Sodor, where the trains are mistreated and the town is run by a diabolical man. No, I didn't just make that up.
Okay. 6 seconds in, and there are already 3 things wrong. First, the trains are not mistreated. If you've seen it, you would know that they enjoy working there. Second, Sodor is an island, not a town. There are towns on Sodor, such as Ellsbridge, Tidmouth, Knapford, Wellsworth, etc. But Sodor's an island. And thirdly, I didn't just make it up. Yes, you did.
That's basically what the show Thomas the Tank Engine is all about. Hey everyone, Thomas the Tank Engine. Another show I would never have expected to be scary, but here we are. Again, let me know in the comments below. So basically, if me to do a theory on next. Starting off this countdown, we have the tortured train.
Okay. First off, trains are what they pull. They are engines.
Now, this isn't so much a theory as it actually happens in the show. So basically, if these trains are deemed unworthy or are no longer useful, then they end up being scrapped or dismantled, aka they're killed.
Okay. So, when the books were written, the Reverend Audrey wanted them to be as realistic as possible, and steam engines getting scrapped happens in real life. So of course he mentioned it, but we never see any engine getting scrapped in the books, TV show, or the films. So
throughout numerous episodes, you even see this happen. There was one episode where they literally pulled the train apart into pieces. They hooked him up to another train, and that train kept going until...
Okay. He was a truck. He was called Scruffy. He kept causing trouble. And then he was rebuilt at the end of the episode.
They ripped him in half. Like, how messed up is that? Or you have a train that was turned into a generator and his corpse was stuck behind a shed.
Okay, Smudger, or Stanley, depending on whether you want to use his TV or railway series name, kept causing trouble. He rode roughly. He had many chances to improve. He didn't take any of them. He kept on riding roughly, kept on coming off the rails, before his controller decided to make him useful at last. Also, there is a theory that this never happened, that it was all made up by Duke to make sure that Peter, Sam, and Sir Handel followed the rules.
he just lives motionless for the rest of his life. The trains are terrified of this or worse things happening to them, and they live in constant fear. In one episode, you have the train named Hyro.
Okay, first, it's not an episode. It's a special. Second, it's Hero, not Hyro. If you'd watched the film, you would know this.
Hyro is shown living and hiding out in the woods since he is terrified that he is too old and will be deemed useless and then murdered.
Right. He was put in that siding, waiting for spare parts to come from his home, which was Japan. But the parts never came, and he was forgotten about. He isn't hiding on that siding because he's scared he'll be scrapped. He's hiding on the siding. Well, he's not even hiding. He's on the siding because he's broken down and can't move. I mean, he is scared he'll be scrapped. But at the end of the film, the Fat Controller says he would never scrap him. So I don't really know what your problem is.
Or how about the episode where the manager of the railway...
Manager. He's the controller. He is literally called the Fat Controller.
Totally harassed the trained James. He painted him pink so that people would just laugh and make fun of him. As a result, James was humiliated and spent the whole episode hiding in a tunnel.
Okay. He didn't paint him pink so that people would laugh at him. He went to the steamworks, and while he was there, he was getting repainted. The pink coat is what is called an undercoat. It goes on the engine first, and then they put the main coat of paint on. Unfortunately, before they could put James's red paint on, Emily broke down. And as James was functionable, he was operable, he could move, the Fat Controller made him do Emily's work because there were no engines left, so James had to do Emily's work, otherwise the work wouldn't have got done. He didn't send him out so people would laugh at him, he sent them out to get the work done. Also, this is a season 13 episode, so very poorly written anyway. And also, he didn't spend the whole episode hiding in a tunnel. He hid behind trees and trucks as well, before doing the work he was set, and found that he didn't mind being painted pink. If you're going to talk about these episodes like you're an expert, at least watch them first.
How messed up is that? Coming in at number 9, we have the psychiatric hospital child. Now, people have a theory that Thomas the Tank Engine is literally just a child playing with his train set.
Okay, a child playing with his train set. One, how is just a child playing with his toys messed up? And if you've watched the
this would explain why there's only one voice for all of the characters, and often it's in third person.
Okay. So if you've watched the show, they're all voiced by one person in seasons 1 to 12, excluding Magic Railroad, because it's told by one narrator. Do you even know what a narrator is? And also, the picture you used while making that point comes from King of the Railway, between seasons 16 and 17, where they do all have separate voices. Also, if you're saying as a child, why is the narrator an adult? And also, most TV shows are in the third person. So, is everything that has a narrator in someone's imagination?
It's the child explaining the story. It also explains why the trains talk but don't move their faces, just their eyes.
Okay, by faces, do you mean mouths? Because I see no reason for them to move their faces, given their engines. But for the mouths, they do move them from season 12 onwards. So, using the fact that only their eyes move as so-called evidence, that can no longer apply.
This is also why the human characters remain motionless.
Okay, the human characters were motionless for the first 11 seasons, because that was how the show was made. From seasons 12 onwards, the human characters are no longer static, so again, you can't use this as evidence anymore.
So, people think that this child is locked in a psychiatric hospital, and the only toys he plays with are these ones.
Okay, so we go. rid of the... Okay, so, just because this is in someone's imagination does not mean they have to be locked in a psychiatric ward and only have to play with these toys. It could just be that even if this is a child's imagination, that Thomas' toys are just his favourite toys and the only ones he wants to play with, and that they have a normal little kid's life that consists almost entirely of play.
The child has a very sadistic mind and tortures these trains.
Tortures the trains. You want to go there again? 1. Engines, not trains. 2. They don't get tortured.
In fact, the child imagines himself as Sir Topham.
I'd love it if he did imagine himself as the Fat Controller, because he's been imagining himself as a buffoon for the last 5 years or so. And even if he does imagine himself as the Fat Controller, then he really cares about his engines, as he travelled the world to look for Thomas in Big World Big Adventures. I normally don't like to talk about that film, as it ruined the franchise for a second time, but it looks like Railway Series quality compared to this video.
The controller of the trains. He then lashes out at the trains, often destroying them.
The Fat Controller has never destroyed an engine. The worst he's done is sent them away. And even then, he hasn't done that very often.
The hospital is trying to get the boy to control his dark thoughts through play, but he can't, so he always ends up killing the train.
No engines have been killed.
At number 8, we have The Trains Are Humans.
Oh, so you've watched Shed 17, but not Thomas. As a fan-made production, Shed 17 is incredible, but I don't think anyone, not even the person who made it, wants to consider it canon, because it's just a fan-made thing.
Yep, that's right. People have theorized that the trains were once real people. These people are now trapped inside the trains' bodies and can no longer control themselves.
How would that even work? Unless you want to include magic in this, which has only ever been shown to exist in Thomas and the Magic Railroad, which is generally thought of as not canon by Thomas fans. And no longer control themselves? Well, certainly in the books and early TV series, it's down to their drivers, but in more recent years, the engines can definitely control themselves.
They can only move their eyes, and they can't even speak on behalf of themselves.
Who's speaking then, if it's not them?
So, how did these people become trains? Well, people believe that Sir Topham is an evil scientist that had a bunch of henchmen working for him.
Oh, so you have been watching Shed 17. Like I said, Shed 17 is not canon, and you shouldn't be watching Shed 17 before watching the show or reading the books.
When these humans were no longer useful, he turned them into trains. And when they're no longer useful as trains, he kills them. Another theory is that there was an explosion at a nuclear power plant. As a result, all the workers turned into these weird gray blobs, with everything being paralyzed but their eyes. Now, in order to preserve them, Sir Topham placed them on trains.
How could people exist as grey blobs? And how do you explain that they can move their mouths from season 12 onwards, and the rest of their bodies from Journey Beyond Sodor / season 21 onwards, if they can only move their eyes, as you were saying?
The trains have grey faces. Moving on, at number 7, we have the slaves. So, people believe that these trains are slaves.
Really? The engines are slaves? Well, they are engines. They were built to work. Do you want them to get paid? What would they spend their money on? The only stuff they need is provided by the Fat Controller, and I don't really think that engines can make use of anything they don't need. Also, actually, even if you still want to push on with the fact that they're slaves, they enjoy working there.
Every day, they have to work their hardest to avoid death.
Every day? Just fucking one example from random. The season 20 episode, Pouty James, where James did not work hard at all after having been forced to pull trucks rather than coaches. And he's not scrapped, is he? There are so many more examples of them not working hard and then not being scrapped, such as No Joke for James, trucks, and Ryan and Daisy, to name a few.
They're constantly worrying that they will be deemed useless.
One bad day means they become useless. Are you serious? The engines definitely don't think that.
Because once they're considered useless, then they're sentenced to death. So they all have been instilled with this fear in order to make them work harder. These trains are literally overworked.
Overworked. Sure, you get the odd episode where they maybe get a bit too much work, like put upon Percy, but not really. These are engines we're talking about. Their purpose is to work.
And they always have to do as they're told. Sounds like slavery to me. They don't get a say in the matter.
What do you want them to say? Sorry, sir, I don't want to pull my train today. And then what all the passengers do. And saying that they get a no say is just a lie. In the season 7 episode Something Fishy, Arthur asks if he can run the coastal line because he likes fish, and Thomas, who was running the coastal line, doesn't, to which the Fat Controller agrees. So that sounds like they have a say.
Literally, they work or they get killed.
That point again? If the Fat Controller used the philosophy, work or get killed, then Edwards would be the only engine left on Sodor at this point.
Coming in at number 6, we have the apocalypse. So, this theory believes that this show takes place in a post-apocalyptic train depot. So, apparently, this area is the only safe zone out there. In fact...
Okay, this isn't completely 100% wrong, but it's like 99% wrong. The show is set around the 50s, and the later Wilbur Awdry books are set in like the 60s or early 70s. So, in a sense, this is one of the only safe places for steam engines left, but not for diesel engines, and it's not the only safe place you have. In 1968, steam was officially withdrawn from British Railways, but you have other safe places like the Bluebell Railway and the Tallinn Railway, to name two, both of which have been mentioned in the books.
In one of the Thomas books, it reads, "Engines on the other railway aren't safe now. Their controllers are cruel. They don't like engines anymore. They put them on cold, damp sidings, and then they cut them up." How?
Okay, well, yeah, it does say that. Percy says it in Stepney the Bluebell engine. But, like I said, the books were supposed to be as realistic as possible, and steam engines on the British Railways weren't safe, making this not a dark theory about a train apocalypse, not even something that happens just in the railway series, but something that happened in real life, where there definitely wasn't an apocalypse, and therefore cannot be a dark theory. Also, if you read the book you took the quote from, then you should know about the Bluebell Railway, another railway where engines can be saved, meaning that Sodor is not the only place. Also, you forgot Percy's stutter when he says they cut them up.
How mortifying is that? And how is that even in a children's book?
It's in the children's book because it's the Reverend Wilbur Awdry, a lifelong train enthusiast who wants to make it as realistic as possible.
Now, this town still treats the trains pretty poorly.
Again, Sodor is an island, not a town. And they treat them poorly? The Fat Controller is one of the nicest controllers out there. He bought a Welsh Gull for Henry, despite the fact it was expensive, to make him steam properly when he could have just sent it to the scrapyard. He arranged for Gordon's brother, the Flying Scotsman, to come to Sodor to cheer Gordon up. How is he treating the engines poorly?
So, it makes me wonder, if we think that this is bad, then how worse is it outside of town?
How bad is it outside of Sodor? Like outside. That's what it's like. The mainland is supposed to be Britain, so look at the railways on Britain, and that is the answer to this question.
We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Thomas's PTSD. So, Thomas is probably the most well-known train out there.
Again, engine, not train.
He's even described as being the cheeky one. But turns out that Thomas actually suffers from PTSD. So, let me give you the theorized background on Thomas. Thomas was built in 1915 during...
He arrived on Sodor in 1915. We don't know when he was built.
During World War I. That means he would have gone through intense labor during this time. Then later...
Okay, the
The thing is that even in the universe, they don't know exactly how Thomas got there, but the theory in the universe is that there was a wartime mix-up, and he arrived on Sodor, then, like I said, in 1915, and Sodor stayed out the war, so I don't think he would have gone through much heavy labour, and if he did, it would have only been during 1914, and that's 1 year, and if it's true, like they said, that he was built in 1915, then he wouldn't have gone through heavy labour at all.
Later on, you have the Great Depression.
Thomas was on Sodor during the Great Depression. The book Tank Engine Thomas Again has its first story set in 1927 and its last in 1948, meaning that both the Great Depression and World War II happens during this book. But they are never mentioned, so they can't have had that much of an impact on Thomas, and he is happy throughout this book.
When railways were at their peak in the UK. Again, Thomas was overworked. Then you have World War II, in which he saw his friends being blown up from bombs.
Saw his friends being blown up. During World War II, the only engines on Sodor are Thomas, Edward, Henry, Gordon, and James. These are the only engines on Sodor before the war, and are all there after the war. He did not see them getting blown up.
Thomas has been through and witnessed a lot.
No, he hasn't. Unless you count having fish in your boiler and falling down a mine as a lot. But then you were on about 2 world wars and the Great Depression. So no, he hasn't been through a lot.
All of these factors has caused him to become traumatized. As a result, he has regressed and gone back to his childlike state.
He has regressed back to a child. He basically always was, right from his very first story, set in 1924, before the Great Depression. And if you've so much as watched the show, you would know that he has matured now.
This is where he feels the safest. But it causes him to constantly act like a child, and he doesn't know how to stand up for himself.
He can't stand up for himself. Have you seen the show at all?
Poor Thomas. In our 4th spot, we have the evil conductors. Now, each train is said to be able to move only when they have a train conductor.
A driver. Even talking American, a conductor is a guard who stands at the back of the train, and it is possible to go without a conductor, as shown in Thomas and the Guard, or to give it its American title, Thomas and the Conductor.
On board. This was proven in one episode where a train was whipping along fast on the tracks. He couldn't stop himself because he had no conductor.
I believe you're talking about Old Iron. He didn't have a driver or a fireman. He couldn't stop because he's an engine, and engines need driver to move, yes. He only went along because his driver was taken ill, so he and the fireman went off James, and then 2 boys got on James's footplate and fiddled with the controls.
Now, the trains are also shown to do some dark things to other trains. Does that mean that the conductors have complete control over the trains?
Magic Railroad is not canon. But if you've seen Magic Railroad, you can see that Lady is the only engine in that film that seems to need a driver. And she does hardly anything in the film. So that would suggest, given all the engines on Sodor don't need drivers, Diesel 10 also doesn't need a driver. So everything he does is him.
And their emotions? Well, yeah, that's what some people believe. So, in one episode, the trains are at a scrapyard when they decide to bully another train.
Okay, you're talking about Stepney gets lost. They don't just bully him, they try to scrap him, which, given how much you went on about scrapping earlier, I was surprised you just called it bullying here. But in the Diesel's mind, Stepney should have been scrapped in the previous season. He escaped last minute thanks to Rusty. And I don't think there's any mention of the Fat Controller buying Stepney, so technically he's still basically owned by the scrapyard and should be scrapped. That's what the Diesels, that's what Harry and Bert think, and so they push him under the grabber, but the Fat Controller saves him again.
They're literally scaring him and pushing him and threatening him that he is going to be scrapped. That means that the conductors were all behind this and wanted to torment that poor train. Then in another episode, the trains create and execute a plan to basically rip a train in half to teach him a lesson.
Like we said earlier, that was Scruffy. He was a truck, and they rebuilt him at the end of the episode.
Why are these conductors so sinister? They're literally forcing the trains to harm each other for their own amusement. Moving on, at number 3, we have the murderer. So, we've already established that Sir Topham, or as they call him, the Fat Controller, is out of his mind.
No, we haven't. The Fat Controller is completely sane.
And the Fat Controller is legit the name that they gave him. I didn't just make that up. They literally call him the Fat Controller.
Of course they call him the Fat Controller. Everyone knows he's called the Fat Controller. Anyone knows anything about Thomas knows they call him this. Everyone knows him as the Fat Controller before Sir Topham Hatt. The fact that you feel the need to point this out proves that you know nothing about Thomas.
But people also theorize that he killed his child. So in one of the books, it is mentioned that Sir Topham has a son named Charles, but we never get to see him.
Yes, we do. There are 3 Fat Controllers in the Railway series, and Charles is the second, being in charge of the railway from 1954 to 1984. So yes, we do see Charles, and he is definitely not murdered by his father as he outlives him.
Then in the episode called Tickled Pink, we see Hat's granddaughter, but not her parents.
Oh, so you have watched Tickled Pink, so you should know that he didn't paint James pink to torment him. Also, parents aren't with their children at all times. Also, this is the TV series, which I count as canon as much as I can, but when it's different from the Railway series, like it is with the Fat Controller, as there's only 1 in a TV series compared to the 3 in the Railway series, it's the Railway series that's canon. Actually, it's a season 13 episode where the writing is terrible. You cannot use stuff from seasons 13 to 16 as evidence, and there's not much you can use from seasons 8 to 12 that can be used as evidence either.
His granddaughter is having a birthday celebration, so it's weird that her parents aren't present.
It's weird that no adults are present. If her parents were murdered, she'd still have a legal guardian that should probably be with her. So it's more weird that no adults are with her rather than her parents specifically.
So people are convinced that Topham ended up killing his son one day out of a fit of rage.
And then he comes back to life to run the railway when the Fat Controller retires. Makes perfect sense.
Maybe because he knocked up his girlfriend too young, who knows?
Okay, that definitely shouldn't be in a kids' TV show. If you're complaining that all the nonsense you've said shouldn't be part of a kids' TV show, then don't go putting adult theme headcanons in that have no evidence either.
Then later on, we are introduced to a train named Charlie. And that's when people theorize that he killed his son and put his soul in a train.
You can have multiple people with the same name, you know.
In fact, in one of the episodes, Charlie is shown to steal the Fat Controller's car.
Charlie didn't steal the car. Samson stole the car because he was being stupid and thought anything that was abandoned was scrap. Learn your facts.
Hello, that happens in like every teenage movie. A rebellious son is mad at his parents and steals his car. So, yeah, he's mad at his dad for literally killing him and making him trapped in a train. In our second spot, we have Sir Topham is in love with Thomas. You heard me correctly. The Fat Controller has a weird obsession with this train. So, people believe this theory for many reasons. So, in one of the episodes, Thomas gets lost on his way to the mainland. Everyone is searching for him, but Sir Topham is the most freaked out.
Yet again, whether you're talking about Misty Island Rescue, Journey Beyond Sodor, or Big World Big Adventures, which are the three specials where Thomas leaves Sodor, they are specials, not episodes. 2, ever heard of friendship? You can get freaked out that a friend has gone missing as well, and they're all freaked out that the Fat Controller is just the one we see the most in these specials. Also, he's kind of responsible for Thomas, given that he's a controller. Thirdly, you can be stressed that a friend is lost.
He's so concerned that he has lost the love of his life.
He has a wife, and she is not called Thomas. She's called Lady Hat.
As a result, he gets angry at the other trains, saying that they aren't looking for him hard enough. Now,
when does he ever say this? The most I can think of is Big World, Big Adventures. He says, keep looking. He never says they aren't looking hard enough, and even if you are talking about Big World, Big Adventures, he doesn't go to the mainland, he goes to Africa first.
Now, when Thomas is found, Sir Topham throws off his hat and tries to hold back tears.
Out of joy for finding his lost engine, his friend, he would have done the same for any engine.
Then says he can always get another hat, but he'll never have another Thomas.
Again! He would have said this for any of the engines. It's not done for Thomas.
It's pretty creepy. He also declared Thomas to be train number 1.
He's train number 1. He declared him to be train number 1. Or engine number 1, not train. Because he has the one on him. And even in the first Railway Series illustration we see Thomas in, he has his number 1. And so that implies he got the number 1 when he arrived on Sodor. I don't think that a Fat Controller could have fallen in love with an engine that quickly when he already had a wife. Like, straight away. Fall in love straight away when he already has a wife and decides, oh, you know what? That engine's cute, I'll give him number 1. No!
Because he is number 1 in his heart. How sweet. Or creepy. And in our number 1 spot, we have the insane Tyrant. So, the Fat Controller is the manager of the Northwestern Railway.
Well done, you've got something right.
And is officially out of control.
But that is wrong.
He is so manipulative and endlessly tortures and enslaves the trains. That's because he is slowly seeping deeper into madness and losing his mind. Let me explain. So, Sir Topham Hatt has given the trains very cruel punishments. For example, there was an episode where it was raining and Henry the Train didn't want to ruin his paint, so he stayed inside a tunnel. Now, the Fat Controller didn't like this and wanted to get Henry out. When all of his attempts to get Henry out of the tunnel failed, he decided to punish him by bricking him in the tunnel. That's right. He built a brick wall so Henry wouldn't be able to escape the tunnel.
Okay, 1. Hiding from the rain is not a good excuse for not wanting to work. And you said he tried to get him out, but all the attempts failed, and the rain stopped, and Henry still refused to come out. If Henry isn't gonna come out even when the rain stops, why try? Why try to get him out when he was in the only tunnel? So you just dig another tunnel? Build a wall? If he's not gonna come out, then why should you stop him? If he doesn't want to come out, then just build a wall, because he's not gonna come out. Henry had no plans of coming out, even when the rain stopped.
And he would have to live in there alone in the dark for the rest of his life. What kind of messed up punishment is that? Like, he even said, we shall take away your rails and leave you here for always and always.
You left out another and always.
He ended by saying, I think he deserved his punishment, don't you?
The narrator said that, not the Fat Controller.
Like, he has no chill. Also, he likes to see the train struggle.
No, he doesn't.
He often withholds useful information from the trains, resulting in them having conflicts that they need to solve themselves.
When has he ever done that? I can't think of one occasion when this has happened.
These could have been avoided if he literally told the trains, but no, he'd rather see them suffer. And that's all for today.
Okay, so, yeah, that is the worst video I reckon I have ever seen. And even seasons 13 to 16 production team probably have more knowledge about Thomas in their little fingers than this presenter does. But I think so. Most top 10 lists seem to be awful because they need to explain all the theories in 1 minute rather than actual well thought out theories. But the thing is, there's just not as much stuff you can get from Thomas to make theories about. So if you limit it down to one area of theories, of course they're going to be bad. There is no way you can make a decent top 10 theory list about Thomas the Tank Engine, even if it's like an hour long and you include any theory whatsoever. But that is all I have for you guys today. I will finish making my 75th anniversary video as soon as possible, but I will end this video with what I think the whole fandom has made of the video I watched today.
Thomas had never seen such bullshit before.